So you're thinking of moving to Denver from California? In this video, we're gonna go over the differences between California living and Denver living, and we're gonna get to it right now. What's up everybody, this is Angel and I'm a real estate agent over here in Denver, Colorado. And the first difference between California living and Colorado living, it's gonna be the homeless population. I just want to take a second to say I'm a real estate agent, and if you're thinking of moving to Denver, Colorado or the surrounding areas, reach out for a private one-on-one conversation where we're going to go over what you like and especially what you don't like so that we can narrow down your search and find the perfect place for you. All of the information's in the description below. Now back to the video. There are way less homeless people over here in Denver, and I'm comparing this to like San Francisco or LA. Denver doesn't really have the quantity of homeless people that California has, like the poop on the street. And this is going to be the most honest video you'll find on the topic, so you got to stay until the end. But even if we don't have the levels that California has typically, it is a growing problem over here in Denver. We're starting to have homeless encampments, and you're starting to see them in other places in the Denver metro area that they weren't typically there. But for the most part, they're going to be congregating in downtown Denver, typically where the capital is and around that area. Now, the second difference is going to be the altitude. When I just moved over here to Denver, I remember vividly, I was just doing a fast walk just across a parking lot that was going into the gym, and I was 100% out of breath. I had as if I was running. I actually told the woman, like, hey, give me a second, I gotta catch up my breath. And it just kind of made me feel like I wasn't in shape to even walk, which that wasn't the case. But the altitude is gonna get you when you live over here in Denver. And of course, California, there is varying altitudes. It's really gonna depend where you're moving from. Most people moving from California to here, moving from LA or San Francisco. And of course, those cities are right by the ocean, and so they have way lower elevations than we have here. But so of course this is going to depend where you are coming from, but I'm going to tell you, once you get used to it, it's going to take 3 to 4 months. Once you go back to visit family or friends and you go for a run, you're gonna feel so great. And it's happened to me many times. A lot of my PRs, they're always occurring when I'm on vacation, as weird as that sounds. And that's just because the altitude just helps you a lot when you're training. So I guess there's an advantage to that. But unless you have some kind of competition that you're trying to get better or you're working out, just the day-to-day living, it's gonna be a little bit more of a struggle living here in Denver. And one thing with the altitude is that if you like to drink, your drinking becomes more efficient here. I remember one time, even before moving, I was in Breckenridge, just went for a skiing trip, and I think I had like 2 beers and I was drunk. Of course, it's not something you would expect, but it happened, and that was because of the altitude. So that's why when you go to the beach, you can have many drinks and you don't really get that drunk. So if you like drinking and your objective is getting drunk, it's going to be more efficient when you're living in Denver, Colorado. And because of that, if you don't want those effects, you got to stay hydrated. I drink water all the time, of course. Colorado water is one of the best. That's some things that the locals are always going to tell you. The tap water is great. And I know some people that they're typically using chapstick all the time. If they don't drink water for a day, they're literally going to get a sore lip. So when you're here, you got to hydrate all the time. Now, the cost of living. Of course, this is going to depend exactly where you're living. But typically over here in Denver, Colorado, unless you're moving from a small town in California, Denver is going to be more expensive, but if you're moving from LA or San Francisco, it's going to be less expensive. I have videos where I go into the grocery store and I show you exactly how much things cost so that you can actually create a budget before you come out here and check it out. Now, just for reference, the median price in Denver right now for a single family home is $570,000, whereas in California, it is going to be $1.2 million. So it's going to be almost double the amount. And of course, it's not going to be double the house. So when you're moving out of the higher cost of living areas, you're really going to have a great bang for your buck when you come to Denver, Colorado. Now let's talk about the outdoor activities. Again, this is one of those things, it really depends where you're coming from. California has some of the best national parks that we have in the US. You guys have Yosemite. So for this one, I'm actually going to say they're going to be very comparable. But when it comes to the winter activities, this one, Denver's going to take it. Of course, we have world-class ski resorts just an hour away from the city. Whereas California, of course, depending where you are, you're going to have to do a little bit more driving. But also on the summer activities, it's going to depend what kind of activities you want to do. Because over here, you really have tons and tons and miles of trails and different activities, via ferratas. So not sure how that is in California, but of course over here it's gonna be an abundance of things to do as it relates to the mountains. Actually, if you take a look at the map, let's go into the map. So we're looking at the map of Denver, and if we zoom out, let me go into the satellite mode, and this way you can tell the huge differences between living in Colorado versus California. So over here, this is gonna be 25, the I-25, Interstate 25, all different names but mean the same thing. But over here you can kind of see where the mountains start. That's what we call the Front Range, and everything to the west of that line I just drew, it's gonna be mountains. So all of this area, it's a mountainous area. There are ski resorts, places to go camping, tons of things to do. To the east of that line, it's very flat. I'm not gonna lie, but like if we zoom out, that's where you're gonna have your Nebraska and your Kansas. So of course, those places aren't known for their natural beauty. But now if we go to California, which is over here, again, it's gonna depend where you live. There is a ton of mountains, as you can tell. So there seems to be a range over there, and that kind of seems like a valley. So again, this is gonna depend where you're living, because if you're living in that area, not really sure how long it would take you to get to those of the cooler places in the mountains. I can tell you here, you're literally, depending where you're going, of course, but within 1 hour, you're at world-class ski resorts. Within 2 hours, you're gonna be in Rocky Mountain National Park. Within 3 hours, you're gonna be in Aspen. Within 3 hours, you're gonna be in Aspen, Crested Butte, or the Great Sand Dunes. So here we have just a ton of variety, and it's all within a reasonable distance. I mean, you can go for a day trip. I like to stay the night or multiple nights, but I mean, if you wanted to visit Aspen, you can go in the morning and come back at night. Like, those are some of the advantages of living over here in this area as opposed to California. Now let's talk about the beaches. This one, California is gonna win it. Of course, we're in Colorado, we're landlocked with other states. The closest beach, I think it is in California. So of course, that's a point for you guys. What I will say though is that we have many lakes over here that there's sand, but I'm not gonna come and tell you this is better than California. The beach is better, of course, but you know, if you just wanted to put your feet on the sand or whatever, there's options to do that here. You're gonna have great views of the mountains, but in terms of the beaches and the ocean, of course, California is gonna take it. Let's talk about the traffic really quickly. Of course, if you're in LA, I heard that's the city with the worst traffic in all of the US. You're literally stuck, I think it's I-10 for hours, and you don't really have the ability to move. And over here, yes, Denver has grown a ton lately. I mean, we've had exponential growth since marijuana became legal, and the roads weren't really built for the amount of people that we're having right now in the city, and we do get congested. But based on everything that people say when they're moving here, the traffic here is way better than it is in like LA or San Francisco. Now, when it comes to the climate, I'm actually gonna give it a tie, and the reason is because yes, you hear it all the time, California, perfect weather year round, 20 degrees Celsius year round, and Yeah, I get it. Like some people like that, but also I have found out that a lot of people moving from California to here, they actually are moving here because they want to have seasons. They want to see the fall foliage in the mountains. They want to have snow and do some of the snow activities when they're living in the city. So this one, it's really going to come up to personal preference. I'm going to say I'm not a big fan of the snow. And even with the snow that we get in the city, I would say that during the winter months, like December through March, we're actually going to have maybe 70% good days, sunny, no snow days, and 30% bad days as it relates to snow. And for me, that's something I can handle. But of course, if you don't like the snow at all, you're probably better off not coming over here because we have a ton of snow. It's just the reality. But if you want to have seasons, if you want to see the fall foliage, the flowers in the spring come up, that's something that you're going to experience here that you're probably not having in California. And I'm going to say, I'm talking about Denver specifically, but the mountains, the weather there, it's 100% crazy. Like we were on a backpacking trip a few days ago. I'm gonna pull up the clip from my buddy. We're on a hike in the mountains. My buddy's coming from Miami. He has some words about the Colorado weather. How is the weather here?
It's very bipolar. It gets cold and then hot and then it rains and then there's hail and then it's sunny again.
How is it right now?
It's a mix of snowy and sunny. It's still beautiful.
We got all kinds of weather. We got hail, snow, sunny, windy, snowstorm, all in the same day. That's what's going to happen in the mountains. And by the way, that happened in the 4th of July weekend. It's not like it happened like we were like in March, you know? We even get snow in July when you're in the mountains. But of course, it's not as common as the winter months. But yes, once you're 12,000 feet up in elevation, 13,000 feet up, you're going to have those problems. And at least for me, I'm not a big fan of the snow. And that backpacking trip, it was somewhat annoying that every time I stepped, I would sink into the snow, and at some point it just becomes no longer enjoyable. But I know some people like that. I mean, some people didn't grow up with snow and they like to experience it. In fact, my buddy is from Florida, and when we were seeing the spots with snow, he was so excited. He even made like a little snowball and threw it around, you know, just playing with the snow. But I can tell you, 5 or 6 hours later, still walking on the snow, he was tired. It was like, okay, like I had fun, but like this is too much now. Let's talk about the culture really quickly. The culture over here in Denver, it's very laid back. Let's go to the brewery. Let's have a beer. I don't care for your life. You don't care for my life. It's kind of like very independent, and I like it in that way. People really don't care about other people's businesses. That's the way I like it. But I know in California, specifically in politics, they're passing some regulations that want to infringe on other people's rights. That's something that doesn't really happen here, so I like that. At least this one, I'm gonna give it to Denver. And now that we're in your favorite topic, politics, let's dive in. And again, this is something that you're not gonna hear other people talk about this because, of course, they don't want to offend people or whatever. I don't care. I'm gonna tell you the truth because if you're moving here, you gotta know the truth.
I want the truth!
And the truth is, the politics in Colorado, they're going downhill, but they're not as bad as California. I'm all about having freedom, and so Denver's gonna take this one. But I'm telling you, it's going downhill. Just this state legislature that passed back like 2 months ago, they were trying to pass bills about rent control, which of course, Keynesian economists and the Austrian economists both agree that it's a bad idea. It's bad for the renter, it's bad for the landlord, bad for homeowners. The only person that benefits from rent control is the politicians because they get to tell the people, I support affordable housing. And while it could be true on the surface, once you get into the policies and how they want to implement them, of course, that's not what it's actually going to happen after rent control is implemented. And not only that, but also they were trying to pass a legislation on the right of first refusal for the government to buy multifamily properties. So basically, if you have a property with 5 or more units and you want it to sell, you first have to offer it to the government to buy that property for you instead of another party. and then they had like 3 months to decide if they wanted to buy it or not. This actually passed the House and the Senate, but the governor thankfully vetoed it. So we have these policies that are threatening our way of living over here in Colorado. But of course, I know in California, they've already implemented some of those policies. So again, it's not as bad. It's going downhill. We're going that way, but it hasn't gotten there yet. Now, when it comes to marijuana, of course, Colorado was the first state that legalized marijuana and recreationally, and then California followed a few years later. So that's very comparable. But now Colorado actually passed a law to have medically approved shrooms or mushrooms. So those could be used for some medical treatments, and they're doing a lot of research in that area. So in that regard, depending where you are, of course, it could be good or bad. And of course, these all comes with pros and cons for each specific topic. But I think that doing medical research would lead you to a good thing, ultimately, as long as they aren't messing the numbers. And I'm not going to talk about COVID. Now, when it comes to property taxes, I'm actually having some mixed opinions of this because, of course, California has Proposition 13. And I'm just going to explain it very vaguely in case somebody's watching this video that's not from California. Proposition 13, basically, when you buy a home in California, your tax base is based on the value that you purchase the property at. And there is only like a certain amount that it can increase every year. And so over a long period, it makes your property taxes lower because you're basically locked into what that number is. So in a year like 2020, where your property went up 20% in value, your property taxes only went up by 2%. And then you only pay 1% on that 2%. So of course, this is a tax break for the existing homeowners. The thing that I don't like is that you can have the exact same home, of course, not the same, but like right next to each other, they're neighbors. One of them bought the house 50 years ago. The other one bought it this year, and they're going to have completely different tax. So that's where I'm kind of struggling to accept because, of course, you know, you're paying more than your neighbor, whereas you're having the same benefits, the same police, the same firefighters. So not really sure I agree with that, but I do like that there's lower taxes. I like it because it's predictable. And if you're retiring, like, of course, like, who doesn't want to know, like, hey, if my property taxes increase, it's going to be a minimal amount. So now I want you to comment down below if you like Proposition 13 or not and why, or if you would prefer the Colorado method. Because here, the taxes change with the value of your property every 2 years. And on average, we're going to have property taxes of about 0.5% of your property value. So if your property is worth $600,000, you're only going to be paying about $3,000 a year. Of course, there's many variables. I'm just taking averages for the purposes of giving an example. Now, over here in Denver, it's way easier to start a business. So that's something I really like. Right now, creating an LLC, a limited liability company, actually costs you $1 in Colorado, and the annual fee, it's like $10. Whereas California, you're gonna have $800 filing fee, and then it's gonna be like I think it was $800 every year in perpetuity. So just creating that higher barrier of entry for new businesses, it's something I'm not a very fan of. As you guys know, I believe we gotta increase supply to have a better economy, and making those restrictions are gonna lower the supply of goods and services. And in California, it's not just that, but there's also many local requirements for LLCs, and it just creates a huge compliance mess that you are probably being deterred from creating your business because of that. So Colorado makes it really easy. It's $1. It takes 15 minutes. You do it online, and it's gonna give you the official paper for your LLC immediately. Now, when it comes to the income tax, this one, again, many variables for everybody. This one's gonna be a tie. California has a progressive tax rate. What this means is the more money you make, the more percentage of your taxes you're gonna pay. And it ranges from 1% to 13.3%, whereas Colorado has a flat tax of 4.4% on your taxable income, and it's actually down from 4.55% in the 2021. So income taxes are actually going down for us. California's, of course, it's gonna go up. But now the thing is, because Colorado is a flat tax rate, it's really gonna depend where you land on your tax bracket to see which one's gonna save you more money. And although I'm a CPA, I'm not giving tax advice, but you guys can reach out. We can do an analysis together and see if you're saving money by moving to Colorado or if you're gonna pay more money. Now, when it comes to sales taxes, again, it depends on the municipality where you're buying the items, but in Colorado, you're gonna be looking at around 7 to 8.5%, whereas California can be anywhere from 7.25 to 10%. And again, this is all very dependent exactly where you're moving from and exactly where you're moving to. So we can't give an honest analysis of this one. We're gonna give it a tie. Now, when it comes to natural disasters, over here in Denver, we do have wildfires. A few years ago, we had the most destructive wildfire in history. It burned tons of houses. It was heartbreaking to see it on TV. And the investigation actually just finished like a year and a half later. It takes a while to investigate the sources of the fires and what really caused it. But anyway, of course, we have that. It is very unfortunate. I would say sometimes we can even see the wildfires from California, like the smoke coming over here into Denver. You would think it's too far, but yes, even California and Oregon, when you guys have wildfires, that gets into here. It's being pushed by the wind. It's incredible. So it's not that magnitude of wildfires, I would say, but it is very destructive and it can happen in the city. Now, we also have avalanches, and of course, it's many tragedies happen every year. And once you move here, you really gotta take an avalanche survive course. I think REI has them for free. And basically, one thing that can happen with avalanches is that it can flip you upside down. And a lot of people, they think they're digging out of the snow, but they're actually digging into the snow, of course, making the problem worse. And ultimately, it's very hard to get out of those situations. So make sure you take that class if you're coming over here to Denver. And from time to time, there is mudslides. I haven't actually seen one. I've seen the end result of one where you see the trees falling down, and it's just a crazy thing to experience, but I haven't actually seen one happening. Now, when it comes to California, of course, there's wildfires, there's earthquakes. Over here, we don't really have much of a problem with earthquakes. If we do have, it's going to be a very low magnitude. I think the average is 5.5. And when it comes to tornadoes, there's very few. And for 2022, the whole year, all tornadoes only cost about $5,000 in damages, and that's across the whole state. So very mild tornadoes. But of course, this is something that can happen. It actually happened like a month ago in the city of Highlands Ranch. The closer you're to the mountains, the less likely that the tornado is going to hit. But of course, we're not exempt. And that happened. The damage haven't been calculated.
The damage is incalculable.
So in that regard, it's very comparable. But of course, again, depending where you're coming from specifically. Now, when it comes to the entertainment, I'm gonna actually give this to California. I think you guys have way more entertaining opportunities. Of course, you have Hollywood. I've visited a few times, and you always see movies being made on the street, and there is just tons of things to do. And over here, we have a ton of things to do as well, but I don't think that's many. We do have all of the sporting events. We have football, soccer, the hockey and the basketball teams have been champions recently as well. We do have Red Rocks, which is the #1 concert venue in the world in terms of ticket sales. So I guess in that terms, we win over here, but everything else on the entertainment industry, I'm probably gonna give it to California. When it comes to national parks, this one I'm gonna give it to Denver. In California, you have Yosemite, you have Death Valley, you have Joshua Tree, but over here, we have Rocky Mountain National Park, the Sand Dunes, the Black Canyon of Gunnison, and we also have Mesa Verde. But not only that, but there's a lot of national parks that are close by to Denver within a reasonable driving distance. So we have Yellowstone and the Tetons, we have Mount Rushmore, Devil's Tower, we have Zion, Arches National Park. All of those are within an 8-hour drive. Whereas of course, depending where you are in California, I don't think you guys have as many access to national parks as we do here. So this one I'm gonna give it to Denver. Now when it comes to through hikes, this one it's very comparable. California has a Pacific Crest Trail, the PCT, whereas in Colorado we have the Continental Divide Trail. Again, those two huge pass-through hikes. I've done hikes on both of these trails, only a portion of it, not the whole through hike. So I'm not really qualified to tell you which one's better or give you my opinion of it. But the Continental Divide, it's about 500 miles longer. So for whatever that means, that I'll leave it up to you. Now, maybe moving to Denver is not for you. Maybe you want suburb living. Maybe you want acreage.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
Whatever you want, it's all good. Everybody wants different things. Our job with this channel is giving you an honest opinion of what's like living in Denver, Colorado and the surrounding areas. So right now, hit the subscribe button. We do videos every week. They're the most in-depth videos about living in Denver, Colorado and the surrounding areas. And also leave a comment down below what areas you want to see next. Until next time, see you later.